very difficult for me to try to overestimate the impact of Carlos Fields. Carlos Fields at heart was a church planter. He was an evangelist. It was his heart and soul. And the churches that he planted over his years of service as an evangelist for the Men's Fellowship is a testament to that passion. And so to say Men's Fellowship is almost in the same breath to say Carlos Fields, because the Men's Fellowship would not be what it is today without the impact of Carlos Fields.
I first met Carlos in the winter of 1967. We'd just moved to the Knoxville area, and someone told us about this dynamic minister at the Church of Farragut, Christian. As a teenager, I went to their semi-monthly or monthly meetings, and Carlos always had a report. It was a time of singing and usually a meal at an area church, but Carlos would always get up and give a report. Carlos was ahead of his time. When Carlos planted churches, he found demographic information from sources that nobody had ever heard of. He found census data tracts. He went to what percentage of the community was churched, etc., etc. Nowadays, we don't think that's any big deal. We Google it and it's at our fingertips. But this was weeks and weeks and months of going through detailed information. And then he would go and start knocking on doors. Carlos loved people. He was going to be there. He was going to visit with you in your home. He was going to do whatever it took to see that you developed a relationship with God.
My first memories of Carlos go back to when I was a little boy. He and my father were good friends, and Carlos came to our church in West Virginia and preached revivals for us. And we would host him in our home. And I remember I was always been a fan of the Andy Griffith Show. And others would joke about Carlos, and Carlos would joke about himself, about the Barney Fife resemblances and his voice. And I remember thinking as a little boy, this is him. This is Barney Fife. He's come to preach at our church. But I tell you that aside, I remember the passion that he brought into the pulpit. His passion for the church, his passion for the lost, his passion for the work of the kingdom. And I can remember as a little boy sitting in the pew and Carlos being up there and just pouring his heart out, his heart for God, his heart for the church.
Let me say a word about his prayer life. He was a firm believer in prayer and emphasized it. But I'm thinking of one meeting of the fellowship, and they called on Carlos to have prayer. Well, he started praying and prayed a little longer, but he was just talking to the Lord very humbly, very sincerely. Talking to the Lord went longer than most prayers do, probably. But I remember what Jerry Mattingly said afterwards. Jerry Mattingly said, "I have not heard a prayer like that for years." You just felt like you were in the presence of God, ushered into the throne room. Carlos was a servant with a servant's heart. He was concerned very much about the lost. He was concerned very much about the kingdom. I would call him a kingdom-minded man. Many times he would say such things as, now what's going to be best for the kingdom? Not just the local congregation, although that's a part of the kingdom. But sometimes you have to sacrifice maybe a little here in order to help the kingdom at large and reach more people for Christ, win more souls to Christ.
And so to say Men's Fellowship is almost in the same breath to say Carlos Fields,